my own ethical opinion is if you make a $50,000 movie that you ask favors from, you borrow from a rental house, it's like you have an obligation to then go back to everyone when you make the $4 million movie and pay them their rates.
Or when you're doing a commercial. Just speaking from experiences, no, like if you got a Subaru commercial or something,
Yeah.
just come on back. Come on back. Don't just don't hit up for the indie. Subaru's got money. It's all right. We can all live.
It's a process of lifting, and that's the obligation. It's like you have to kind of try and lift everyone. That's why I take it personal when someone. I mean, I'm glad Edger's turnaround made Nosferatu. It did really, really well, and that's gonna help majorly. I'm really glad that he did that. I'm really hoping that Ari Aster's next film is gonna do really well because Beau's Afraid didn't do very well. If those guys that are ahead of us can kind of like do that, it really lifts a lot of people underneath them. And that's the industry works that way. It's like you've got Killers of the Flower Moon blowing $200 million. You have Ridley Scott blowing $350 million. And it's like whatever. I think Napoleon was $300 million. And it's like, that's hurtful.
Jeez.
That's a massive step back. And it's like the industry is constantly shifting, I would say the market has less. My own belief is that the market has less effect on the impact to filmmakers and Hollywood as the filmmakers themselves. When they make good, when Oppenheimer makes $1 billion on a $75 million budget, that reverberates through the industry and helps
everybody.
Lots of filmmakers that are trying to get films made, and it's like, but when they blow the money, that the negative impact goes through. The market itself is like. That's always fluctuating. You could still I was just reading about Novocaine. They made that movie for, I think it was $15-18 million. And they were, I think Warner Brothers made or Paramount. They weren't worried because they're going to make $30 million off that movie over time. That's net zero as an impact.
Yeah.
Like those type of movies Iron Claw made $43 million on a $10 million budget. That's a positive impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
The filmmakers need to start being aware that, in my opinion, they need to start being aware that it's not the market, it's the filmmakers that are opening or closing doors to filmmakers below them.
No, it's true. I mean, they affect the whole field. And I think the danger is, I think, and you can see this, just when you think of the human aspect, it's hard to be like, well, I'll do this is independent film level, but I think it translates to Hollywood. It's hard to be the guy who's saying like, no, and no. And yeah, I'll do that myself, and so on. And it's easy to be the guy writing checks who's like throwing a party and dispensing $2 million of investment money or $500 million of studio money, and you're like, I'm the man. Everyone loves me, and they're all kissing. It's not real. None of it's real. You have to recognize it's because you're their gravy train, and so it's easy to fall in that trap. Whereas filmmakers like Woody Allen, right? He always had kind of similar budgeted movies and made similar scripts. And to me, a thing I can't get over is episodes of these Star Wars series cost more than the original Star Wars movie.
I know.
And they're so much worse. Yeah. So much worse.
It's wild they don't really, they're in the same boat. They don't have somebody that really.
They're just going through the motions and everyone's gun for hire. And nobody, but it seems like people would want it to be successful. So much money's at stake. Even if it's a producer, it's like, I want this to be good. They can't just go, but we're so much just going through the motions.
It's void of risk.
Yeah.
Is what's happening. You have, Francis Ford Coppola, you have George Lucas putting their own money on the table and being like, I'm hedging my bets that this matters.
Yeah.
What they have now is with these kind of things like Star Wars and so forth, worst case scenario, you get fired and then I just move to another studio. So it would be different if it was like, if this doesn't do well, you got to go find another job. You can't work in Hollywood anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
There would be
the producers of Rocky mortgaged their house. If that Rocky had failed, they would have been potentially homeless.
Yeah. Would the Star Wars movies do better if they suck? You don't get to be in Hollywood anymore. They'd probably be better.
Yeah.
If we were functioning that way, as opposed to executives just move into different different studios and they just continue to move around, the risk is less. And that's what's void is. All these filmmakers really put their, heart and gut and money on the table. And that as a result of it, you got these amazing franchises. And now you have people with not that same commitment or dedication or I would say even love for those franchises, because those aren't my thing. But when you feel that somebody, I've watched movies that I don't think work, but when you feel the love of the filmmaker in it, it reverberates through the film. Even if the film doesn't work, you're just like, yeah, but you could tell. Like they took a big swing that is like a complete miss, but I felt the swing. You feel the wind off the bat. It's very cool even when they don't work. Whereas you feel these safe movies that are like, man, there's no risk being taken, and as a result, you're hurting the franchise. That's a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Like, are you watching Studio? Are you watching?
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. The second episode where he totally screws up the shoot, I laughed so hard I cried.
100%. You can feel it. Seth Rogen like loves Hollywood, loves movie making. He loves being a filmmaker. You can it's in the DNA of that movie or that show. Every episode, I'm just like, there's a lot of love in here. It's not just like, hey, let's just make a TV show and see how well it does. It's like he did the research. Him and his Goldberg is his partner. The intricacies in there, the little like Easter eggs that are all over. You just feel the love in that, and I'm like, that's really exciting to like see, and I think that's why it's doing well. Is you just feel it, and I think that's important.
No, it's true. I think I wonder if like people. I mean, it's hard to be in film. It's really hard to be in film.
Yeah,
and it's like if you have connections and you've got money to last in the field for a while, it's easier. And so maybe it's just gotten so hard and so connected. And so, I mean, again, I don't want to I'm not going to gripe on this because it's kind of just normal, but maybe they're just, it's such, you have to be in this level that you just really never even had a risk in your life. Like, it's like, you just, things are always kind of taken care of for you. And so you didn't really have to take that. Whereas like George Lucas nearly died in a car accident when he was teenagers. And that was hugely impactful on him, and more than that, he would race cars, which is a risk taking that,
Well, it's really interesting. Norm Macdonald had had a show that was on Netflix. It was a talk show, and M. Night Shyamalan was on there, and Norm is Norm,
Yeah.
So I was watching that, and M. Night Shyamalan comes on, and Norm basically is like, what the hell with your career? Like, you just made a slew of garbage movies. What's up?
Yeah.
And one of the things I thought was really interesting is that M. Night really talks about, like, he started to lean heavily on craft over risk the more experienced he got. So less risk taking, more craft based stuff, which is why those movies don't really work. And then he started to talk about The Visit, which he mortgaged his house, financed himself, and was like, I'm going to put myself in a risk place again. The Visit's like a funny movie. It works really well for what he made. And I was like, oh yeah, bravo. And then you go back to he went back into the craft thing. It's like, where's the risk with the last two movies? And it's like, he needs that risk to kind of oscillate. And you can kind of see that. Other filmmakers, it's like Nolan just is constant. I think he understands where he thrives as a result of putting himself in these positions. Like the stuff I read about Oppenheimer's, like it was supposed to be $50 million, something like that. He wanted to build the real sets. They were like, we don't have the budget to build the real sets. He's like, I'll do the movie for less if I can build the real sets. They were like, okay. And so he made it for less.
How did that work?
I don't know. He didn't go into details on it, but I was like, he knows he needs the real sets. He needs the 3-dimensional space to be able to do the thing he does, as opposed to maybe just like build it on a.
Well, especially I think, I mean, this applies to like these Batman movies and stuff, but even because he plays with physics in this case, and like the atomic explosion is so unreal that he has to have a lot of realness around it. Like Batman's unreal, but he makes everything else real, hyper real to make Batman seem more real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's an important part of his style, but maybe that comes from being independent.
Yeah. Aesthetically, you really have to. I mean, you see, like, I really like Darren Aronofsky a lot. He was a big influence in me early in my career. He always sucks when he goes big.
Yeah.
He's like a real character study individual. And when he lives in the character studies, that's when he makes really brilliant movies. And there is an element of that as a filmmaker to really kind of understand like the worlds that you can work in. And sometimes filmmakers just, I mean, I would never, slight anybody who decided to make a $300 million movie because I'm like, the paycheck's $10 million. I know why you did
no.
it.
If anybody's out there and wants me to make
But
Batman 27, I'll do it.
But oftentimes you see if it's outside of like what they can handle, if they came up through the indie world and they're used to being really gritty on it, gritty and small. And that's like a big arena to be working in, which is a very different arena. Normally the movies are very mediocre. And it's a bummer because you're like, it didn't help your.
Yeah, well, I think it's like, I mean, especially when that much money's at stake. I mean, and I've talked about this in previous podcasts, but like to me, like how much filmmaking is just kind of being a boss and doing business stuff.
Yeah.
Like you should read all the business books. Like look up, like I do this. Like I'll walk into like a university. If I'm by Columbia, I'll walk into the university bookstore and I'll go to the business section. I'll see which books they're requiring and like buy a couple of them.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's as good as like learning it. And a lot of getting an MBA or something. But yeah, a lot of it's just admin and dealing with the big studio and, crucial conversations and so on.
Yeah. A buddy of mine was a commercial photographer for, it was like 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
Made about $1 million a year. And some young photographers were asking him the process and he was like, it's 90% business, 10% creative.
Yeah.
And that's pretty in line. I mean,
well, you just won't survive without the business. And that's the miracle of Nolan is that he survives the business route and still has his art in it.
Yeah.
And he does it head on with the system. And partially he's built up a reputation where he can.
Yeah.
But like Woody Allen, his solution was keep my budget small, give tons all the back end to the studio in exchange for creative freedom, and then just keep doing it.
Yeah. It's
so, I mean, there's different ways to navigate it, but if you don't get it, you get lost.
Yeah. Well, what you're pointing to is actually understanding who you are as a filmmaker.
Exactly. That's the big part. And how you can navigate it with yourself.
It was like kind of after Northman didn't do very well. Edger's, one of the articles I read, he's like, I'm just going to make $10 million movies. He was like, I'm going to go back to Lighthouse and kind of live in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And then he didn't, of course. It's like Northman was 50 million, but that's 50 million to 90 million. That's a big different arena that you're playing in.
Mm-hmm.
He did better with Nosferatu because he got the creative control he wanted to. And he's still dealing with like kind of 4 characters in this world, which is where he can navigate. And I was like, I walked out of Nosferatu enjoying the movie, but also being like, I think Edgers is finally understanding himself as a filmmaker. That's important.
Yeah. So, and I don't know, I hear people talk about this, but like, again, like studio executives, I guess it's very easy to be like, well, the studio ruined the movie. And that's like a good out. But it's like, I mean, just think of it as your own money. I mean, like you have to have respect for the money because like, that money could be a whole bunch of casts for broken arms in Africa or something. I don't know. But it's like this is people's lives.
Yeah.
In this money.